explaining the structure of my HIIT, sprint or interval workout. I do this on Tuesday, and it's part of 1 out of 7 main daily workouts. So first of all, this is Garmin, and Garmin shows you the targeted primary muscles as well as the secondary muscles. We also have untargeted muscles. I also try to have these different stations I have here, which would be basically one category above sets maybe. I try to arrange them in a way that actually makes sense and allows the different muscle groups to ideally maximally rest in between. Now let's take a look at the steps. Garmin calls them steps, and maybe I should also call them steps. I decided on each 3 rounds because 3 multiplied by 6 makes 18. Now if I take 18 and I multiply by 2 because I have 1 minute rest in between, then I have in total 36 minutes. My upper threshold for a workout is usually around 40. I deviated recently because I began tracking the strength workouts more properly. But nonetheless, the 40 minutes is still kind of my high mark for the daily workout. This is also due to a variety of reasons. 2 of them would be that after the workout I still need to do something in the day and not be completely done, and also sometimes I do now evening workouts or a quick evening sprint, an interval run maybe in addition to the main workout of the day, which seems to somewhat be beneficial, at least in terms of, well, a few factors. So let's take a look. The treadmill. So all of this is happening in the gym. I do have a gym do have access to a gym which also has an air bike. I found the air bike to be fairly useful because otherwise it is fairly hard to do different exercises which are not swimming, but nonetheless not only use the legs. So because I also have an upper body, ideally I would also use the upper body in another exercise besides rowing. So I decided to first do the treadmill. I actually had the treadmill on the second as the second step for quite some time, but recently I put it on the first step because the treadmill is the hardest. The reason for this is that the treadmill allows the standardization of the workout, and so I can compare myself from one week to the next. And the reason for this is that the treadmill is able to set a speed and an incline, so I can actually so from one week to the next, I can compare very well the workouts I did and the performance I had on there, because I just need to run a certain speed at a certain incline. What I usually do now is a drop set in terms of the treadmill, because if I run for 1 minute and then I rest for 1 minute, I'm not fully recovered. So I do the second sprint. If I begin, that's kind of what I'm trying to aim at currently, at 3.5 incline. So 1% incline is about as much incline as one would need in order to have kind of the same conditions as outside, because the ground is uneven. At least that's what the Wikipedia page of the Cooper test told me once. And so I would consider this to be 2.5 actually, but of course the number on the treadmill is 3.5, so I just say 3.5. I would start with 3.5, then go to 3.0, and then to 2.5. And 1 minute rest in between. In terms of getting the treadmill up to speed, what I found useful is that I get the treadmill up to speed and then I kind of jump on the treadmill, which is kind of a risky move, especially if I'm not that warmed up and might break something. And also the treadmill, if it's running at 19.3 kilometers per hour, might throw me against the back of the window behind me, and that's quite a risk, and that's also why I think it's mentally so demanding. Also because I otherwise would only maybe sprint 30 seconds and then it begins to become very hard after 25 to 30 seconds. I find myself again and again looking at the time at almost always at the 28 to 32 second mark, so usually at around 30 seconds. So it seems to be the case that the anaerobic capacity I have provides mostly fuel for the first 30 seconds. Now then I row. Why do I now row and not do the indoor bike? Because I found that if I have the treadmill and the indoor bike right one after the other, then my legs, mostly my quads, are still kind of filled with blood and so on and so forth, and I don't really have the power to now power through on the indoor bike. I set all of the machines that are available to the maximum difficulty and then basically go as fast as I can. The next round, therefore, is now rowing indoor, even though in all of the other workouts I do on a daily basis, apart from the run on Sunday, I do warm up with 1 minute row, which then makes it quite easy to just start the workout in a gym because I always do the same thing, which would be rowing. But recently I began on the treadmill already, because otherwise there is an incentive, I think, that on the rowing, where the speeds currently changed, it only shows the current speed and no average speed. And here the speed is fixed on the treadmill. But if I have just a instantaneous speed, then, or a pace, then I might just as well not perform as well to save some energy for the treadmill that is then quite exhausting. What I found now is that this structure already kind of works a little bit better. The treadmill ramps already my heart rate and also my respiratory rate up quite a bit, such that the rest of the steps are then actually already at a higher state of so my system is already quite ramped up. If I would start with the other ones, then I would try to maybe conserve some energy, and the other ones are not as hard hitting as the treadmill is, also maybe because of the external constraint here. And so having this as the first, basically I think intensifies the other steps compared to the other way around, where I already said what I wanted to say in this regard. The second then is rowing indoor. I try to currently hit speeds or paces of 140. I think this is for 100 meters or something like this. So it seems to be for 500 meters. And so elite athletes' rowing pace for 500 meters is around 120. But I currently seem to hit at the indoor rowing if I'm really good. And of course it is always instantaneous speed only, because it doesn't show on average for the minute, which would be nice. And I currently hit sometimes 135, sometimes 140. If I have a bad day, then it's like 210 or even above this. The next then station is the indoor bike, in which I usually pedal standing, because I found that if I pedal standing, then I have often the first 15 to 20 seconds I can really burst out again with the anaerobic burst out. And then, well, the rest is just increasing my heart rate. What I also found is that my heart rate is actually not really increasing that much. I mean, the first is kind of anaerobic, and then eventually kind of the respiratory system as well as the heart rate seem to kind of kick in, but this is often only after 30 seconds, after 35 seconds or 40 seconds. So it has been fairly hard actually to build kind of an accumulative heart rate or an accumulative cardiovascular load with these kinds of workouts. And initially I tried to hit the whole workout should be kind of zone 4 or something like this I had in my mind, but maybe I am just less intense right now, or maybe it's also because my glycogen stores are not that filled. I'm currently experimenting with a higher carb intake again. Well, creatine also seems to have made quite an impact, especially on the sprints, which then I think it has a positive effect, at least in my case, on the anaerobic sprints, which I can turn out, provided I am sufficiently hydrated, because the creatine draws a lot of water after ingesting it. Then, at least in my case, then I do the elliptical, which is kind of one weak point of the workout, I have to say, because on the elliptical I just cannot get power out really. And it shows how many calories there are burned, and it also shows the distance, but I just have no relation. I just cannot really, from one workout to the next, I just have no idea how much effort I put in. And that's something that is quite nice running outside with a Garmin watch. And indoors, it would just be so nice if all these devices were smart and actually would track my effort and would plot it over time. But even though many of these devices are smart, so I'm running on a Preco treadmill, the rowing machine is a Matrix machine, it's not smart. Then we have the indoor bike, also a Preco machine. Then we have the elliptical, also a Preco machine, then again the Matrix, and then we have the Assault bike. The Assault bike also has kind of a smart connection with Bluetooth and Plus, but it doesn't connect to my watch, and it doesn't connect to the app Assault Bike had, even though now the app is also gone from the App Store, it seems. I tried to connect it a couple of times, and it does connect to the app. It just doesn't transfer any data whatsoever to the app.